You're now watching Winter Nightwolf Live, a Cliffside production.
Where does the Black experience in Minnesota begin?
And then that's when we found the houses.
Tribal historian Jim Jones has found clues on the shores of Leech Lake. This may have been the site of a trading post of the famous black fur trader named George Bonga. In a village near the confluence of Lake Superior and the St. Louis River, an Ojibwe woman married Pierre Bonga, a black fur trader. Their children, including son George Bonga, born around 1802, would be the first known people of African ancestry born in Minnesota. In the early 1800s, the fur trade was the heartbeat of the heartland. Along with the fur-trapping Native Americans and the fur companies, there were the legendary voyageurs.
Engagés, voyageurs, were basically the truck drivers of the fur trade. They paddled the canoes, they hauled the goods, they built the posts, they did the hunting, they did all the labor.
Known for songs as colorful as their dress, the voyageurs drove the area's culture and commerce. After attending school in Montreal, George Bonga began work in the fur trade like his father, Pierre Bonga, and his grandfather, Jean Bonga, before him.
He knew how to get around in the country, where the best routes were, where you could portage from one place to another, where a good place for a post would be.
He was a huge man, I mean, big, by even contemporary standards, and a powerful man.
There's one account that he portaged 700 pounds. They were human machines, and men who were strong, who put up with hardships day in and day out, were valued. And most of them wore out pretty fast. It was a lifestyle that used people up.
But not Bonga, although his longevity in the business was due to more than just brute strength.
He had to be somewhat of an intellect. One, he was very skilled in languages. He was educated in Montreal. So he did not come to the frontier without skills, without intellectual attributes. He was an entrepreneur as well.
In 1838, George Bonga received his license to trade. As a trader clerk for the American Fur Company, Bonga eventually ran a post on Leech Lake, where he would have a home for the rest of his life. The experience of the French Indian Métis and the few early black settlers suggests that, in these early days of Minnesota, race was often irrelevant.
This was the frontier, which meant the survival was key. And in a frontier, you don't have the luxury to discriminate. And so it was possible to find all kinds of roles that Black people could fill and all kinds of identities that they could acquire for themselves.
Native people identified anybody who didn't live in their way, whether they're Dakota or Ojibwe people, as white people. Bonga's part of that in his work as a trader. He and another man claimed to have been the first two white men in the country in the area they were trading with the Ojibwe, but not as a white man racially, but as a participant in European culture.
So the notion of color and race is fluid.
George Bonga knew Ojibwe. His mother was Ojibwe. He had an Ojibwe wife.
George, like his brother Stephen, used this multicultural background to work as a diplomat translator. Both the Bonga brothers' signatures can be found on major treaties between the United States and sovereign tribes.
And that's no easy place to be because you had to be trusted by both sides.
Bonga's Cultural Balancing Act did strain his relations with his mother's people. In 1837, the trading post of William Atkins was robbed. Atkins' son was killed in the raid. A member of the pillager Ojibwe was the prime suspect. George Bonga tracked the accused killer through the Minnesota winter for days. He finally captured the suspect and brought him to the authorities at Fort Snelling. After his return to his trading post on Leech Lake, Bonga mentioned the tension he encountered.
The Indians say, if Chigawaskung is missing, they will set fire to my store and break my canoes for my part. I don't think they are really in earnest in these words.
Despite this, Bonga's standing with the Ojibwe remained good. He eventually started a family at Leech Lake.
George married into the Leech Lake band. He took a wife from the Anigam community here. He accepted them. They accepted him.
We find in history there was a certain element of trust that seemed to exist between Native peoples and people of African descent.
The Black pioneer gained the respect of many of Minnesota's white founding fathers, and Elder Bonga used his legendary status to advocate for Native Americans who were being pushed further into the realm of the reservation. In the late 1860s, letters he wrote to government officials reveal his contempt for corrupt government Indian agents.
Respected sir, I am really sorry to have to say that I have lost all hopes in Major Clark. It is a disgrace to the government to have such an agent. I have not hesitated to make known to you my opinion in the matter of great importance to the Indians and the people of the frontier, hoping that the Great Spirit will so guide our ways that we may meet again and have another good campfire talk. I remain yours, George Bonga.
I mean, he was a man of substance.
He was one of the forefathers of the state, one of the pioneers.
Bonga died at Leech Lake in 1874. He and his siblings had several children who continued to have experiences that spoke to their unique heritage. George's daughter, Susie Bonga, had been a rising leader among the Ojibwe women of Leech Lake. But white racism towards blacks began to influence some Native Americans, which presented obstacles for Susie Bonga. Photos of son William Bonga, one as deputy, the other as tribal delegate to Washington, seem to capture the Bonga's cultural crossroads. "200 years after the birth of George Bonga, conversations on a genealogy website showed the descendants of this pioneer family are still pondering their unique background. Along with their living legacy, namesake landmarks with variations on the spelling of the family name dot the land in Cass County.
To me, this is his place.
Jim Jones and others continue to make discoveries that help unravel the story of the Bongas and Minnesota's pre-territorial history.
Yeah, something like that come over.
But on this day, the Pillager band member made another discovery, a brilliant rainbow that appeared over the rough waters of Leech Lake. A colorful connection between two far-off points, just like George Bonga.
OCO and greetings. I'm Jay Winter Nightwolf. Welcome to Jay Winter Nightwolf Live. My guest today is a very close friend of mine for many, many years. His name is Darwin Strong. And Darwin Strong is the great-grandson of George Bonga. Darwin is also a member of the Red Lake Ojibwe Nation. And at this time, I would like to introduce you to my brother and my friend for many years, Darwin Strong.
Mataki. Name is Darwin Strong, and like Jay said, I am one of many great-grandchildren of George Bonga. I am, as Jay said, a member an enrolled member of the Red Lake Nation in northern Minnesota. But again, that doesn't define who I am. It's based on the fact that I'm of Anishinaabe blood, Chippewa, African American through George, and I am Dakota through my Kanoyer family. But, glad to be here, Jay.
It's an honor and a pleasure to have you here with me, bro. I haven't seen you in person in so long, I almost forgot what you look like. But guess what? You're still a good-looking bro.
As are you.
Thank you. Darwin, you know, you've got so much history that comes from your bloodline, your people. And I have, as you know, I've always been very interested in the intersection of Blacks and Indians. Of course, I've had some people say you need not get into that, but let's tell the truth about it. You know, enough of the games. We've had more games than we've had any other success. Darwin, your grandfather, George Bonga, I remember years back we had a discussion about him on the radio show I used to do in Washington, D.C. And the first time we met was when you and your daughter, Gianna, came to Washington, D.C. For that ride against the XL pipeline. Am I right?
Cowboy, it was called the Cowboy and Indian Alliance. Yes, for the
absolutely.
pipeline.
Yeah. So now that we have made it known who you are, let's talk about your heritage and how you have carried the truth all of your life about who you are, and you have never denied not only being Native but also Black. How has that carried over in your life, Darwin?
Well, for me, and of course, my immediate and extended family, after our genealogy was done on my mother's side, and that finding coming forth, I am who I am. There's nothing to deny. My blood is rich as a Anishinaabe, Dakota, and African American. And again, there, that's one part of 3 parts of who I am. And again, there's no reason to deny my blood and where I come from.
Okay. Have you had any problems with what people thought about that? And I know, like me, I could care less, you could care less, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have you had any problems with tribal members or, say, tribal leadership with this?
No, because again, for our people or anybody for that matter, who are they to judge? Who are they to question? I am who I am, and it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I wear the same shoe. I mean, regardless of what anybody thinks, regardless of how anybody feels, that's theirs and not mine.
There you go. There you go. Okay. Did George Bonga live long enough for you to meet him?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay. Okay. What about some of his children? Did you ever meet them?
No. As a matter of fact, again, when this came forth through our genealogy, and his George's children, it's been baby steps, just based on the fact that for George and who his father was, Pierre, I wanted to start there first, and with that, it's been time consuming, but then yet again, going through this process, it's all about the baby steps.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that time will come. It's not today, and
Right.
of course, based on the circumstances of what's going on with this virus, it's going to take a little longer. But then yet again, it's going to give me the opportunity to do my research in regards to where they are or their children are.
Okay, I know this is hypothetical, but when you finally get to see them, some of them, face to face, what do you think the conversation is going to be like?
For me, of course, it's establishing that connection with them,
Mm-hmm.
but it's going to go and be more than that, just based on the fact that it's going to be nice to hear the stories that they have.
Yeah. And I guess one of the things is just being able to touch your flesh with their flesh and know that it is of the same root. I don't know if I told you this or not, but my grandmother, my father's mother, was Taino from Old San Juan, Puerto Rico. My grandfather, my father's father, was Shoshone and Cherokee from around the Four Corners. But all of my mother's people were from South Carolina, and they were all Cherokees. After my father's mother died, my cousin in New York called me and said, "Jay, did you ever wonder what happened to Grandma's papers and letters?" I said, "The whole family wanted to know what happened to them." "Well, she gave them all to me." I said, "Well, that's good. At least they're in good hands." She said, "But I have something to tell you." I said, "What is it?" She said, "Are you sitting down?" I said, "Yes, I am." She said, in one of Grandma's letters in a little book that she used to keep her notes in, she talked about her grandmother, her great-grandmother, was an African slave on the island of Puerto Rico. She said, "What do you think of that?" I can't think but anything good of that. "Well, why would you say that?" I said, "Because growing up in the neighborhood that I grew up in, there was only one other native family. They were Cherokees. And the guys in the neighborhood, all of them were black, and they were wondering how could I dance so well? And how could I sing so well?" I said, "Because I told them I was Indian." Dancing and singing, that's second nature to us. That's what we do all the time. So I have no problems with that. I am who I am, and everything that makes me, my blood, has made this guy sitting right here, your good friend and brother, Jay Nightwolf. And we should, I'll stand tall with my chest out about that. That's just the way it is. And one of the things that I like about George Bonga, your great-grandfather, is the fact that he was just one of others, such as Harriet Tubman, that had a history with Indians over 100 years ago. So the intersection between blacks and Indians on our land, Turtle Island, has been going on, according to our history, for over 50,000 years. And I'm looking at these pictures of that everybody is watching on the screen. And people say, wait a minute, I've never seen anybody like that. Yes, you have. You probably have relatives in your family. You have people that you work with, people you see every day that have Indian blood as well as black blood. I rest my case, Darwin.
Okay.
All right. So you have a lovely daughter who calls me dad too, but not like that. And you have this amazing little grandson that is actually grandpa's baby boy. When Gianna was growing up, how did you explain that to her? Did she know that she was not just Indian but African American too, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. She's well aware, and has saw a photograph of him, and again, for me, it was imperative. It was extremely important that she knows and understands her bloodlines,
Right.
and that being one of them.
Now, you are horse people. You raise horses.
Yeah, we have horses.
Yeah. Darwin, I've got so many things I want to ask you, but we'll just limit some of that now. Let's talk about Gianna. You are so proud of her and who she is and where she has gone with her life. What do you have to say about that beautiful daughter of yours? That's my daughter too, because I adopted her. She adopted me.
Well, for one, she's an incredible mother. She too understands, knows who she is, and is comfortable with identifying herself to her blood.
Mm-hmm.
She, other than being a incredible mother, she is also, of course, an incredible daughter, just based on the fact that she grew up through ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
She on her Dakota side.
Mm-hmm.
She's been a part of a special circle, a Hochaka,
Mm-hmm.
since she was born, and there's a very unique story in how she received her Indian name. Most people in Indian country would identify to that, but we know and understand it as her spirit name, and is Wio Hiampawi, woman who stands in the east. So for Gianna and all the things she's accomplished in life, graduating, like my wife and I, going to college. She's a horse trainer. She's got a 2-year degree in equine science, and she got a 4-year degree of Bachelor of Arts in adolescent behavior.
Well, you know what, Darwin? I think we're getting old.
No, you're getting old.
Sorry, bro, but we're getting all together.
Don't throw me in that pot. I'm kidding.
Get back to George Bonga. This man was so influential. He was an educated man. You know, he graduated from college in Montreal, Canada. And he basically became a spokesman for Native rights for the Ojibwe people. The man had, I would say, the tenacity to go after this Army major who was a Indian agent and write a letter on behalf of the Ojibwe people about how dishonest this white man was. You care to comment on that?
Well, it kind of reflecting back on the video from Pioneer TPS, Pioneer Broadcasting, the video we just saw, and the comment that was made by whoever the gentleman was, and made reference to the fact that he was somewhat intellect, or a intellect. No, he was an intellect. It had nothing to do with somewhat. Just based on the fact that if we sit back and we reflect in that time and that era, he basically was a genius. I mean, just based on the fact that the documentary, or the little snip or the clip that you saw, it doesn't say anything to the fact that he was trilingual. He was a trilingual speaker. He spoke French. He was fluent in French. He was fluent in the Anishinaabe language, which most people don't know or are aware that the Anishinaabe language is the most complex language in the world.
Exactly.
And also, of course, the English. So being in college at that time, and as a person of color, a black, mind you, at that time, it basically reflected on who he was.
He was
to come back here and then be a fur trader. I mean, the other thing was, being trilingual, he also had a very large political circle. He was connected to the politicians here in the state of Minnesota, from the governor,
and well respected.
Yes. So for who he was in that time, in that era, speaks volumes.
Yes.
I mean, just based on the fact that if we go back to the civil rights era, so on and so on, and speak to segregation. He was before India. He was before all that. He did all that before that, and to have that stature at that time, we're basically was and were against all odds.
So it spoke of the measure of a man. Now, let's talk about his wife. She was Ojibwe. And the two of them actually opened up the very first hotel on Mackinac. Was it Mackinac Island?
Up around the Leech Lake area.
Right. Do you know anything about that, or how that that went over how successful it was?
Well, you know, if we out of speculation, okay, out of speculation, for me, I would assume that it had to have been a success just based on the fact that she as a full-blood Anishinaabe woman, and he is a mixed blood, being of Anishinaabe and African American blood. Even there again, they did something that was unheard of at that time in that era, just based on the fact you have we have a full-blooded native, and then we have a mixed blood that they were entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to get back and talk about George a little bit into the conversation. But something that has really been of interest to me is that the Jesuits, the Catholic priests, were also a part of the boarding school on Indian Reservation.
Well, there it was more the boarding school era was more Catholicism than it was anything else. And I say that based on, again, my experience. People think that it was my elders, their elders that went to boarding school. No, there's still boarding schools, but they don't operate and run to the capacity of what they had, the way they had functioned when I was in boarding school.
Right.
It's different now.
Absolutely.
But so there, yeah, it was more Catholics than anybody.
Mm-hmm. Now you work on the Rosebud Indian Reservation, right?
No, I have relatives out there through an in ceremony.
Okay. Now recently, the Jesuits returned 525 acres back to the Rosebud Sioux tribe. Do you know anything about that, or how it started? Or do you have any comments on that? Because you're up there in that part of Indian country.
Well, this, for the return of the 525 acres, it speaks volumes just based on the fact that we have a revival going on right now called Land Back. And this would be a part of that, just based on the fact that a lot of, not a lot of, but some of our tribal communities have been steering themselves in the direction of acquisition of lands that are inherently and rightfully theirs as tribal nations. So with that, much respect to the Jesuits in regards to
just doing the right thing.
Return of the land.
Yeah. You have a niece, I believe, on Pine Ridge that actually lit the fire under this whole thing about land that's held in trust and getting the land back, especially from the Catholic faith. And I'm going to get in touch with her, but what's your take on that?
Well, again, just being aware of that particular circumstance, and her findings and the position and action that she had taken on it. I applaud her for that, just based on the fact that the situation was that there were non-tribal members that somehow, some way ended up on her family's trust land. And when it had become known to her, she basically opened that door and initiated talk and action in regards to having them removed from the land at that time. And I don't want to assume, nor do I want to surmise in how any of that happened, but it did. But again, once this was aware for her that what had happened, again, she spoke up, and through tribal government, in bringing this to their understanding, the land is back in her family's hands.
Okay.
Again, that would be another example of our land back issue. Having, we can speak to the Black Hills,
right?
That goes all the way back to the Fort Laramie Treaty. That whole issue, it's the Black Hills being of the Lakota people.
Right. So, Darwin, if you had to talk to some of the young teenagers on any reservation, what would be your advice for them as to stand up and be Native or Indigenous? What would be your advice?
Go back or go back and find out who you are and where you come from. That's an important piece for us to be able to connect with, to identify with, and to carry on these stories and legacies of our blood. But also get an education.
Yes.
Because we're in a whole different era now. So without that education, in this day and age, it's imperative that they have it, just based on the fact that it's going to help them on their path in this life.
You're absolutely right, because I remember one of my good friends who was Seneca, and he was in business for himself. And I saw him for the first time dressed in a suit, carrying a attaché case, right? And he was always known to be the warrior type guy. So I asked him, I said, "Sugar, you're carrying a briefcase." He said, "You're damn right I am." He said, "We're just not warriors with weapons." He said, "We're briefcase warriors. We have armed ourselves with the knowledge that you can only get in college." He says, "I have a master's degree now." I said, "That's great." Then he says, "So whenever I have to go to court to defend my business, of course I'll take my lawyer with me. But one thing that they would see about me is that I'm no dummy and I'm no fool." He said, "And I had to go to school to learn that." And that is very important to our young people, to go to school. You got opportunities, take advantage of them, because in order to secure a better future, you have to be prepared for it. And like you said, in this day and age, you got to have some education to back up what it is that you want to do. So before I go any further, I got to make an announcement. If you want to see or hear some of the prior podcasts and television broadcasts of Jay Winter Nightwolf Live, you can go to nightwolfproductions.media, MEDIA, which is Jay Winter Nightwolf Indigenous Peoples Reality Media. And if you want to follow us, this television presentation, it's live on Facebook Live, but tonight it'll be posted on YouTube. Just type in Jay Winter Nightwolf Live, and you'll see some amazing guests that I've had in front of him, like my brother here, Darwin Strong. And I want to also say, Chief Harry Kindness, I know you're watching this. Thanks for doing that, bro. And Sandra Hope, my producer of my podcast, you're always there with me. So, Darwin, I don't know how much time we got left for this broadcast. Is there anything else that you want to discuss before we sign off?
Well, it was a good discussion. In our conversation, my conversation earlier with Leslie, it's a reality. It's reality. In regards to remembering that, as far as we have that, how could we put it? Ethno crossing, so to speak, in regards to mixed bloods. I mean, even for the topic that we're having now, people don't understand and realize that, especially down south in the Seminole Nation, and not just they, but other nations that were around that area during the slave era.
Right.
Our people took them in, the runaways. Took them in, harbored them, hid them during that time. And they just weren't cast out to the wolves, so to speak. They were protected. And our people at that time knew and were aware of what was going on with the slave trade at that time. For, again, going beyond George, shedding light with my great-great-grandfather, Pierre, his being a slave, a naval captain, going in where I've gotten with him is to come to find out he came from the province of Gabon in Africa. And within that province, he came from a village called Bongoville.
Okay.
And that so what he had done is he basically had taken and severed Ville off of there, and he took the name Bongo or Bonga, as pronounced two different ways.
Right. Well, Darwin, thank you so much for being my guest tonight. And I'm really hoping that you would come back again so we can continue this discussion. But I want to wish you a Happy New Year, bro. Because this fool in the White House is out of here. He's got a few more days. And he is such a dramatic. Well, I'm not even going to comment on that because they'll put me off television.
I don't even want to have that discussion.
But anyway.
But again, here's a teaching for everybody. You know, again, this is a Washichu, or a white man recognized New Year.
Yeah.
For me and for us, our New Year is at spring solstice.
Exactly.
That's our official New Year. It's the beginning of that new life.
The reason I'm happy about this New Year coming is because we're going to get this idiot out the White House.
You're welcome, Sandra.
And Sandra, thank you so much for putting up with me and Darwin. And to my producer of this Jay Winter Nightwolf Live, Leslie Fry, I love you dearly. You have been adopted. You're part of my family now. So I will leave you all with this thought. It's not about the pigmentation of your skin or the color of your eyes. It's not about the texture of your hair. It's not about the clothes you wear. It's not about that deity that you pray to and call God. What it's really all about is how you treat my heart. So until next week, I'll leave you with these words in Cherokee. Danada, Goai, Wado. And thank you, Darwin, for being a part of this.
It was good. Thank you for inviting me.
Not a problem. You're always with me, bro. Always.
Likewise.
Absolutely. So we'll see you all next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. See you guys. Take care.